Hello everyone, back to today's second video, doing CFS 6-month look ahead for today's second video. After a month-long layoff over December and Christmas, the CFS 6-month look ahead has returned because I know how much you all love it. So, we're going to go 6 months ahead with the long-range CFS V2 model. It's going to take us from next month, from February, through to July 2018. Now, do keep in mind this is just for fun. So, the first month or two has some merit to it because if model is working correctly, then you would hope that it's getting some sort of signals anyway, but might be reliable for 1 or 2 months away. But as you go sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, note this is just a snapshot of what model is showing. It's almost undoubtedly going to look very different when we come to look at it next month, and therefore you should just take it as a bit of fun. The charts are better, so I might as well have a look at them, but don't, whatever you do, take it too seriously. So, that said, we will be going 6 months ahead with the CFS V2 model in around 30 seconds time, just to say that today's first video was the weekend forecast. You can find that video here on the homepage. Just scroll down page a little bit, it's above Slow Desk, and there's also the written version. You get that from buttons at the top of the page. Going to be turning milder next week. Let's have a look at that and see what you think. But now we're going to get on with the first CFS 6 months look ahead of 2018. Haven't looked at this for over a month now. Last time I looked at it was back in November. So let's do it. Let's get on with the CFS 6 months look ahead for January 2018. And we're going to start off by having a look at the 700 millibar height anomaly. So we're going to begin with the 700 millibar height anomaly for next month, February. And if everything, as I say, is working correctly, this should be the most reliable part out of all of this. So the brighter colours, yellows, oranges and reds, are extrapolating to high pressure, and blues are extrapolating to low pressure. British Isles is just there. So we find that for February, we've got an anomalous ridge of above average height centering across many parts of Europe, particularly Central Europe. Then we've got the trough of below average heights in the Northern Atlantic, and the jet stream is going to be going something rather like that. So it looks like quite an unsettled month in February, and also potentially a very mild month as well, because we're going to be bumping up the air from the Southern Atlantic between the trough and the ridge. So you're going to be bringing the air up from sort of Madeira, that sort of area, Canary Islands, Azores, and so you'll expect a very mild month in February. So mild, but potentially for the north very wet, starts us off for tonight's CFS 6 months look here. Then we go through to March, and this one shows a very significant change in the pattern. So that area below average heights is still there in the middle of the Atlantic, but we've lost all of the above average heights across Europe, and we've raised heights quite a lot over Greenland and to our north. So we've got a northern blocking signal here in March. What's going on is that underneath that we've got this low pressure that's still driving in the air from off the Atlantic. So this is still unsettled and it's still mild as well. However, the model is clearly seeing, it's picking up on the potential for quite a change in March. And if this blocking signal was to strengthen more, it would start to push this trough eastwards. And of course, if we get that trough, at the moment, the CFS model is centering that trough in the middle of the Atlantic. But if we was to centre that trough, let's come over here. If we was to centre that trough across Central Europe, then what's going to happen is that with the blocking up here, we will push much, much colder air down from the north and possibly also in from the northeast. Now, when we come to look at the temperature anomalies, CFS V2 will still be forecasting a mild, maybe even very mild month for March. But that is quite a substantial pattern change that the model is picking up on from February through to March in terms of what's going on over the Arctic and over the polar field. And so I think March, based out of the 2 months, March holds the much greater potential for at least some colder weather, particularly if that blocking signal was to strengthen. Whether the model is seeing some sort of sudden stratospheric warming event taking place sometime during February, which impacts the atmosphere in March. I'm not sure, but that is quite a big change from February through to March in terms of what's going on to our north. So watch this space on that. Right, let's go on to April. We're at month 3 now, so obviously confidence is beginning to fall away quite a lot. Really weak signals, actually, in April. We've got an area of below average heights to the south of Greenland, some sort of weak ridge down close to the Azores, but otherwise not much else to go on, really. Just very average looking signal in April. So very weak signals there in April, and not really enough to go on to be able to make a prediction from the height anomaly. Anyway, we will see what the temperature precipitation anomalies are looking like very shortly. Now, this is May. This is at month 4 now, so obviously we are within the realm of being just for fun now. But for May, the model is going for quite a unusual, quite bizarre-looking pattern. We've got above average heights through the northern part of the Atlantic and going up towards Greenland. Perhaps still some sort of a blocking signal up there as well, far to our north. Then very weak pressure really across Europe, so not much else to go on. You would expect there's going to be a lot of easterly or northeasterly winds coming in with that, I would have thought. Despite that this whole area across Europe is white, I would assume there's got to be some sort of trough of low pressure around here as well. So potentially it could be quite a wet and quite a cold month, actually, or quite a cool month in May. I'm not sure that's a terribly good 700 millibar height anomaly for May. I don't know what the temperature and precipitation anomalies will look like when we look at them shortly, but based on the heights, anyway, I would have thought that's a pretty poor, pretty grim-looking signal, really, for the final month of the spring. Would certainly be bringing in a lot of east winds. You get a lot of easterly winds anyway in May. But, I mean, with such above-average heights as we're seeing here, I reckon there'd be quite a northerly component to those easterly winds. So potentially that could be very cool. And if we was to start getting low pressure underneath that area of blocking, then of course, particularly for the south, that could turn into really quite an unsettled and maybe even fairly wet month as well. So May is looking a little bit grim. We go through to June, and these odd-looking patterns continue. Where was all this northern blocking in the winter? That's what we have to ask ourselves, because in June, month 5 now, so it is just for fun, but in June, again, we've got a northern blocking signal here, with above average heights to our north. That's never a terribly good sign in the summer, because as you see there, we've got an area of below average heights in the Atlantic, and also over here across sort of Denmark and that sort of area. We have got some above average heights to our south, but they're not really doing a great deal for us. And again, I think what we're doing with the flow and with the pressure is, and the jet stream, is that we're going something rather like that. And so again, I reckon that's a pretty grim looking signal for June. Could be really quite an unsettled and cool month as well. Maybe quite a lot of rain coming through in June. And then July, month 6, so it's just for fun, but July rounds it all off. The middle month of the summer, high summer essentially, looks, well, it's a weak signal, but it does look a bit unsettled, really. Got above average heights down to our southwest, below average heights in the Atlantic, and the jet stream presumably is coming through a bit like that. But it is a very weak signal in July, certainly not as strong a signal as we see for May and for June as well in July. So starting off very mild for February, and then maybe something a bit colder in March. April's very weak. May and June look as though they could be very poor. And then July, it's a weak signal, but probably quite unsettled too. That's my interpretation based on the heights. Let's have a look at the temperature anomaly. So we're coming back to February, and this is a very grim if you like cold weather, temperature anomaly that CFS V2 is predicting for February, and it's going for a very mild month. Remember, the reason that's happening is that in February we've got high pressure in all of this sort of area, and then we've got low pressure out here, and so in between the two we're bringing up a real long effect to the southwesterly like that. So we're pumping up a lot of very mild air not only from the southwest, but probably also bringing it up from the south as well. And so that's why the whole of Europe, from Iceland, Ireland and Portugal in the far west, to Russia over in the east, and all points in between, coming out with a mild or very or even exceptionally mild month in February. This is how March is looking. Now, I said March would probably be a milder than average month based on what the model is doing. The reason for that is because despite the fact it's raising heights up here, it does have a blocking signal in this area. Despite that, it still wants the low pressure to be centered out in the Atlantic, and so the upshot of that is that we continue to bring in those west-southwesterly winds. But remember, I said that if this ridge that we have up here was to strengthen, then it would start to pump down or push down much colder air from the north, and so that would force the trough eastwards. So the trough would be centered here, and between the two, we would pull in the wind from the north and the northeast. It does have that above average heights to our north, not strong enough to force that trough away to our east, not strong enough at that point. But again, I think there is a very significant change in the pattern that the model is picking up on from February to March, and so I'll be a bit dubious about that temperature signal in March. I think I have to be very careful about that. For February, based on the pressure pattern, that's okay. You'll expect that. But for March, with the blocking, I reckon there is the chance that Europe, particularly Western Europe, could be a lot colder than that is suggesting. So March up for grabs. This is April, and remember, signals in April did become very, very weak in terms of the height anomaly. Still going generally for a milder than average month across Europe, but less so in terms of the anomaly compared to February and to March as well. So it is seeing temperatures returning closer to average. And actually for the UK and for Ireland, we're coming out with temperatures around average, really. So obviously it is going for a cooler month in April to average. Remember, it's a warming time of year, so it will still be warmer probably in April than March, and certainly be warmer in April than February. But in terms of the anomaly, to average, it's going for a cooler month for the UK and for Ireland in April. Now that's May, and by then obviously quite significantly cooler across most parts of Europe, albeit only returning to average. Remember, in May we had that rather bizarre pressure anomaly, or height anomaly, with lots and lots of ridging going on up here and also down there and also over there as well. And then there wasn't much else going on across Europe, but we thought it'd probably be some sort of trough in here, maybe, and the upshot would probably be quite a lot of easterly, which tend to get it anyway in May, but a lot of easterly winds, maybe with more of a north or northeasterly component. I think that idea is kind of being backed up a little bit by the temperature anomaly, because it is substantially cooler to average. Again, remember, it's going to be warmer, particularly compared to February, but it will be warmer in May compared to March, and probably be warmer in May compared to April. But these are anomalies to average. So to average, this is clearly a much cooler month that we've got here across Europe in May. Get through to June, and again, another reasonably cool month, really. When these long-range seasonal models are showing average, for these models, that's average anomalies, I should say, temperature anomalies. For these models, an average temperature anomaly is quite cool. Very often, when you see average temperature anomalies, you can tend to shift that, really, to cooler than average a lot of the time. So May and June both looking quite cool in terms of the anomaly to average anyway. We've got above average heights again up here during June, which is never a very good sign in the summer. And then it was placing below average heights close to the UK and also over here as well. It's going for quite a warmish month down in the Mediterranean, so be okay if you're off for a summer holiday down to a Med in June, but otherwise maybe quite cool in May and June. And then this continues to July as well. Nothing really happening with the temperatures as we're going into the summer, all looking rather disappointing. Certainly nothing particularly hot being signalled here, except maybe in the far north of Scandinavia, where it's significantly warmer than average, and also over towards Iceland. But otherwise, generally, we're seeing average temperatures again in July. That is 6 months away, so it is in the realm of being just for fun. And then finally, let's have a look at precipitation. So, for February, looking at generally quite a wet month in the far northwest. So, Norway, Ireland, parts of the UK as well, particularly western UK, coming out with above average precipitation. Many central parts of Europe are drier than average, and that, of course, is because we've got the high pressure centering around here. We've got the jet stream going through there, so that's why it's wetter than average in this northwestern part of Europe. And again, the reason it's a very mild month is that the air is coming up from the southwest. So quite an unsettled month being signalled for northwestern Europe in February. This is March, and it's going for a wetter than average month, quite substantially so actually for the UK and for Ireland. That's because the model is parking a trough just to the west of Ireland, area of low pressure being centred to the west of Ireland, with above average heights up here. So quite a blocking signal going on up there. Again, March, I think it is up for grabs. It's a different pattern that we have in March compared to February. And whilst the model wants to maintain those rain-laden and mild west-southwesterly winds in March, I reckon that holds the greatest potential out of the 2 months remaining where we could get some very significant cold weather. February, March. I think based out of 2 months, March is the one that holds the greatest potential if we can shove that trough eastwards and centre it into central parts of Europe. Very weak signals then for April, so we've got really weak signals in terms of the height anomaly for April. The temperature anomaly is fairly weak as well, and the precipitation anomaly is weak also. So there's no real signal for April. That's only 3 months away, but it is really confounding this CFS 6 months look ahead tonight, because we just have average precipitation here. So no real, nothing really to work on for April. That's a very difficult month out of all of this. Now, May's not looking too bad from a precipitation perspective. So my concern about May was that with all of the high pressure going on around here, we would possibly be getting low pressure around here. But there's no real sign of that actually, because it is, if anything, coming out with a relatively dry May. So again, I think we are bringing in a lot of easterly, northeasterly influences. We're blocking off the Atlantic, so that's the primary reason why it's dry. But the concern is what's happening here. The concern is that we don't get a trough of below average height centering over Central Europe and the North Sea, as it is actually as much as Southern Europe that's looking rather wet during May. So again, it's a very bizarre sort of pattern that the model is picking up on during May. It would be a very odd sort of month, but rather cool and dry is basically what CFS wants to do, with a very blocked off Atlantic and lots of easterly winds during May. Now, I thought June might be a bit problematical. We're out at month 5, so don't be concerned about this, but it's going for a wetter than average month, quite substantially so in June. Again, the reason for that is that we've got a strong blocking signal up here, and what tends to happen in block summer months is that you'll park a trough of below average heights underneath it across Europe, northwestern Europe I should say, and so that's what it's doing. It's got a southerly tracking jet stream, and it's bringing a lot of wet weather in during June. So a pretty cool and wet month being signalled for June for the UK, and I would assume for many central northern parts of Europe as well. And then that pretty grim signal continues into July also. Luckily, this is 6 months away, so nothing to take serious. But July also looking rather wet, rather unsettled for the UK and much of Northern Europe as well. If that's right, it's another pretty poor summer in a year ending in 8. But as it's 6 months away, I don't think it's worth worrying about. I'll say no more about it for the time being. Coming back to sort of the next couple of months, because I think that's what we need to focus on. Rest of that is just for fun. What we need to focus on is that the CFS V2 wants a very mild February across not just the UK, but for much of Europe, so we won't be suffering alone if you like cold weather. Very mild month in February, and also quite wet in the north and the west of the British Isles as well. It is seeing a substantial change in the pattern as we go into March. It wants to raise the heights a lot to the north, albeit not yet, as far as this model is concerned, not yet enough to force the trough that's to our west in February, and it's still to our west in March. Not enough blocking to force that trough over into Central Europe. But if that blocking signal around Greenland was to strengthen further, there's a good chance that we might find ourselves going cold and wintering into March. And then beyond that, the signals are quite weak for April. So very difficult month to predict in April. And then we start getting those bizarre sort of blocky charts for May and June. And it all starts going rather downhill as we head into the summer. But we won't dwell on that for the time being. A couple of months' time, we'll start to take those charts for the summer more seriously. But for now, we won't worry about it. So that's CFS 6 months look ahead off and running for 2018. We'll do one of these every month for the rest of the year. So just for fun, do keep checking back. And if you enjoy CFS 6 months look ahead, there will be more fun over 2018. Tomorrow, I've got some analogues coming up for you for the spring. So, I haven't done too many updates for the spring, but I thought it's time to start having a look at some analogues. We'll be looking at solar activity analogues for you tomorrow. It's really kind of like a follow-on from the winter analogues, if you like, a direct follow-on. Our good friend James Ackrill has been sorting all of that out for us. And that'll be with you at around 10 AM tomorrow. We'll also have the Sunny Roundup, as always. So keep checking back for all the updates. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.